So the neurotypical brain, right, it has plenty of dopamine. The ADHD brain doesn't have enough. And so it doesn't spend dopamine on things that are small all that often. And so we don't get that intrinsic reward for like, oh, I did the dishes. Oh, I went to the gym. Oh, I cleaned my living room. We just don't feel that. And so we have to figure out how to make those things bigger and more meaningful. We kind of have to logic our way to dopamine, I guess. Like, oh, I went to the gym and I physically feel good, even if I don't neurologically feel a glow or a sense of I'm an amazing buff dude, and pay attention to what rewards we can find and really go looking for them.
ADHD Rewired, episode 339. This is the podcast for those of us with really good intentions and a slightly wandering attention. I'm Eric Tivers. I'm a licensed clinical social worker by training and a coach by design. I'm your host and I have ADHD. ADHD Rewired is more than just a podcast. We are a community. We are wired for connection and you are not alone. Go to ADHDrewired.com to learn how you can join us in our free secret Facebook group. Get additional resources for every episode, including links to any resources we mention on today's show. You can support us on Patreon, sign up for our email newsletter. You can request podcast postcards to distribute to your clients and support groups, and you can learn all about our intensive online video-based coaching and accountability groups. You can do all of this at our website, ADHDrewired.com. We know that starting is the hardest part, so let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of ADHD Rewired. We are here for our live monthly Q&A. It is August 11th, 2 days before my son turns 9. So happy birthday to Gibson. And we are here with a question from Melissa, and it's a question that I think we could all appreciate. So Melissa, go ahead and ask your question.
Absolutely. Be glad to. I've loved staying at home due to COVID. And so me and my husband cleaned our entire house, including areas we haven't touched in years. And I need to know how to keep it that way because I have done this in the past and it never lasts.
Okay. So you've cleaned the house, you've done the good thing, and now you're like, when's all the mess going to magically reappear? Okay. So the thing about like cleaning and organizing is that it never ends. And one of the things that I have found that has helped me minimize and decrease my clutter and messes, I am absolutely not perfect with it, is recognizing that so often the messes and clutter start and build because I listen to that voice in my head that says, I don't want to do this right now. All right, I'll do it later. And so often it's a thing that takes 30 seconds or less, but it is those 30 seconds or less tasks that when you keep saying, I don't feel like doing it, or I'll do it later, even when your real intent is to absolutely do it later, that's your intention. And then we forget.
Oh yeah. I 100% have that problem, especially if it requires getting a thing from a downstairs to an upstairs. Okay.
Do you have a transition basket?
No.
So having something that you can put at the bottom of your stairs, it says to go up. So that way you can just go to the stairs, not have to actually go upstairs, where all other distractions live. And then, so when you go up, you just bring that up with you. And if you have a lightweight durable basket, you can just send it back on down and watch it go tumbling down the stairs.
I like that one. Yeah, that's definitely an issue. And I know I have that other, can't quite get things. I tend to come home right now. It's not an issue, but it will be again in the future. Come home after a long day and then hit the stopping point of just can't get to that last couple steps. And then everything loads up in the kitchen/dining area, which my husband tells me is not a storage location.
I know for the kitchen sink, especially if I get home a little bit later, I have the dinner and then I and I just want to like veg out and, get on my laptop and do something, or maybe watch some TV. So I'll put the dish in the sink with the water. I'll take about 4 steps and be like, I don't want to do it now, and I'm not going to want to do it later. Let me just do it now, because it will actually take less time if I do it now, because food won't be caked on, and it's just easier to clean. So it really is, I think it's a lot of those just little moments of do it now, even when you don't really feel like doing it. Brendan, what are your thoughts on it?
I have a few. One, when you're decluttering, right? One of the things that happens when we declutter is you kind of pick stuff up and we're like, where does this go? And then I bring it over to where it goes, and I get distracted in the living room or whatever, doing living room stuff. And then I come back to my office and grab something else. And I'm like, where does this go? And that doesn't work. So I've started looking at spaces and going, what is the job of this space? And anything that doesn't serve the job of that space goes in a transition bucket to be taken out of that space and processed later, so I don't wind up drifting away, kind of like what Eric was talking about earlier. I recently cleared off my kitchen table because the job of the kitchen table is to eat at it, and I use it as like a base of operations kind of, and that doesn't let the kitchen table be a place to eat. So I'm trying to find a new base of operations, and I haven't figured that out yet. But that's clearly defining the job of the space is important. In terms of maintaining clean, how many people are in your house?
There's only 2 adults and 2 small dogs.
Okay. Can you assign a space to you and the other adult? Like one person's in charge of the living room, someone else has the dining room, that kind of a thing, so that you're the dining room captain and you get to take stuff that's in the dining room that doesn't belong there and put it into a transition bucket, or say to the other person, hey, get your coat out of the dining room or whatever. Like that way someone is taking responsibility for the space, as opposed to like a tragedy of the commons scenario where everyone is expecting someone else to clean it.
That is a neat idea. Right now, since we're both home, we've been trying to do we clean a space together at the same time so we feel equivalent. But I know if I do go back to working full time, not until January at least, but that will then fall apart. And he's home a lot and I'm gone a lot. Mm-hmm. That's another problem. But I like that possibility of knocking spaces. One of the issues we sometimes have is that a lot of the stuff is mine. But he's the one who's home a lot, and then I'm the one who doesn't put the stuff away, and then I'm the one who says, oh wait, but I worked all day, I'm not going to do this.
Yeah, get like a big Tupperware thing and put all your stuff in it.
Well, what about during your day? Are there things that you might be able to do to try to clean as you go more, which I know is like this thing that neurotypical people do? Right. But it requires more transitioning. But in if we really think about it, I know I've talked about this before on the podcast, any task that we do has 3 parts to it. There's the setting up the task, there's the doing the task, and there's the cleaning up the task. That third one is the thing we often forget about and don't think about it as part of the task. But if we actually start to think about it, the cleanup is part of the task, it's not a separate thing, then we know that done means I've put the thing away.
Yeah, that is definitely the part I have indeed the most trouble with. And part of getting where I'm at right now is that I've started to recognize that is my executive thing, is that I have that issue, but I still haven't quite solved it.
And does that come from, if I don't see it, it doesn't exist anymore, so I need to be able to see it so I can't put it away?
No, sometimes I see the pile of things and they still don't get put away.
That's not what I mean, though. What I mean is, like, I got this thing that says I should register to mail in my vote. I'm going to leave that on the counter. And I got like apples and I want to make sure I eat an apple tomorrow. So I'm going to leave that on the counter. And here's my,
yes,
fanny
I
pack.
definitely
I'm going to leave
do
that on the counter. Yeah.
I do have a lot of things that are out because they are consistent use items, and me and my husband have indeed had consistent conversations about what is a storage space, what I'm allowed to leave out and what I'm not, so I can remember it.
Yeah, you might need to be able to see it in order to remember it, so you're leaving it out. So is there a more efficient and less clutter-feely way to leave things out but still seen, like hooks on the wall or something like that?
That's a good idea. I've been trying to make more baskets.
Baskets. Because they are contained. They look nice. Yes.
So I now throw a bunch of I make a drink in the morning and it requires 5 different containers and they now live in a basket. So I'm allowed to leave that basket on the island and it's okay. But some of the stuff I take to school has piled over time. And like right now, I'm not going, not a problem, but I know it will repile.
What about you? Do you have any, additions to this?
Yeah, I had an interesting thing recently where we got a Roomba recently. So we got the fancy robot vacuum. And the thing that it's done is it's great that it just does all the vacuuming on itself. But to let it do that, we have to pick up the floor. And so we're more consistently getting the kids to pick up their toys and do all that so that it can do its job. And so, go ahead, Brendan.
I just love it that you're being accountable to your Roomba.
I was kind of having the same. I was thinking that like it's sort of like when I was growing up and we had a cleaning lady that came every week, and my mom would always be yelling at me for like, you have to clean up so the cleaning lady can come. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. She's a cleaning lady. Why can't she just clean my and it's a different kind of cleaning. But
my thought is like, if you have something that requires you to clean for something else. So it's like, I know Eric talks a lot about with having guests over, which we're not doing right now. But like that same kind of idea where there's something else that's the first step that will gets you the result you want, even though that's not really what that first step was about.
We do have an added version of that right now, because since we cleaned our upstairs, we opened it to our dogs, which we've never let up before, which means that if they're allowed up, I have to keep certain things clean or they will destroy them. So that is a starting point to help me with that, is that I know I have to at least be able to shut the doors and keep certain things out of the way or my pug will eat it.
All right. And let's go to our next question. But before we do, the one thing I want to add to this too, when you have ADHD, like we are pretty reliably inconsistent with our things. So it might just be maybe focus more on when you realize you let it slip a little bit, just start again. Keep starting. I mean, I really think that's such an important part, whether it's decluttering or planning or exercise, like whatever it is that you've fallen off of. Skip the part where you are sort of wallowing in self-flagellations and start again. All right, let's go on to our next question. I wanted to answer a question from Kaylee. I wasn't sure if Kaylee wanted to go live or not. I'll wait just a second for her to respond in the chat. But the question is about she's her first ever appointment for ADHD testing next week. Any resources you'd recommend about what to expect? Or is there something that we wish we would have known before getting tested? So let's bring Kaylee. All right, Kaylee.
Hello there.
Hello.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
So all I know is I have this all-day affair next Tuesday, and I really have no idea what to expect. And I'm a little nervous that they're going to tell me, no, it's all in your imagination.
Well, first of all, I think that is a really common concern that people have going to get that evaluation. Have you chosen a place that specializes in ADHD?
I chose a place that was recommended to me. I'm going through like UChicago Counseling Services. So It was someone recommended that they recognize.
Okay. And do you have struggles with executive functioning?
Yes.
Do you have all the things you have read around ADHD? Do you relate to those things? Very much so. Tell me, what is the primary purpose of getting the formal diagnostic evaluation?
There's a couple of things. One is maybe I'm a grad student, so I'm getting some accommodations from the university, but I'm also hoping that medication might be an option. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So two really valid reasons to get that evaluation. Part of why I asked is I think that a lot of people are encouraged to get these really long evaluations. And there is a growing body of research that's saying that it's not necessary for that full. I know that Russell Barkley's put out a couple statement papers, basically telling people to knock off, like cut it out. Like the idea of like that people need this full neuropsych evaluation because it's not any more reliable than the clinical interview and rating scales completed by yourself and someone that knows you. It's if you are looking for ruling out comorbidities or learning disabilities or things like that, it may be helpful. But so again, I don't think there's a lot to like worry about. I think the things that you are struggling with, you may still be struggling with. And so the accommodations may really help kind of point the way or guide you to what you need additional support with. What about you, Brendan and Will?
Eric asked a lot of the questions I would have asked already. In terms of what to expect, boredom. Like anticipate getting bored and it feeling tedious and long. Like you said it's an all day affair. I just want to spell out what that means. You're like, anticipate that. And then also it's not anything to be scared of. And the odds of them saying, nah, it's all in your head, that's really slim. People who work in psychology very rarely say, no, you don't have a problem. You're just crazy. Like that isn't how we usually talk.
Yeah, I'm coming from a place of having my psychiatrist through the university, I think, be very, very skeptical because there's an idea that college students are just looking for Adderall to stay up all night writing papers or something. So that's what I'm up against.
And there is some truth to that. And so I think that if I were a psychiatrist that worked at a university, I would probably have that lens too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. And that's even with the, I have thought about that before, that if I were to be employed by a university, would I be more selective, I guess, about who I actually think has ADHD? I don't know. Because it is frustrating when the medications that we absolutely need, that people are using them for other purposes.
Right. Will,
what do you wish you would have known?
I think the most important thing for me to know was that after I got the diagnosis, that is not my ending point for that journey, that I still have to do a lot of work with self-advocating for myself, that just after I got prescribed meds, that wasn't the answer. That was just meds help immensely. But at the time, I didn't like jump in and like start learning strategies and doing, listening to podcasts and all that kind of stuff. I kind of was like, oh, well, now I'll take this and I'm cured. And that didn't happen. And that was kind of like a big letdown. Yeah. And it took me years to go, oh, there's more I can do. And coming on, asking questions, that's a great place to start with already. So you're way ahead of where I was.
Okay. That's good to hear and keep in mind. Thank you.
Yeah. And related to that, there's going to be people who are like, oh, you're just using it as an excuse. Like, you're just an awful human being, basically. Like, you're awful because you're not doing stuff well enough. Then you get an ADHD diagnosis and they're like, well, you're an awful person because you got an ADHD diagnosis now and you're just using it as an excuse. How do I can't win, I guess. But I like to split the hair of excuse versus reason. And the way I personally split that is a reason explains why I messed up. Like what led up to me messing up and all that kind of stuff. Okay. It doesn't mean that I don't have to figure out how to fix that mess up.
It doesn't let you off the hook.
Yeah, it doesn't let me off the hook from fixing it, but it does let me off the hook from carrying a ton of guilt and shame around the fact that I made this mistake. Whereas an excuse lets me off the hook for all of it, for the reasons I made the mistake itself, fixing the mistake, having to feel bad about it. An excuse kind of does all of that and often secretly leaves a lot of guilt and shame because you use it as an excuse and that doesn't sit well with most folks. But a reason lets me put down the emotional baggage and address the problem that I have caused by making that mistake and try to fix it or ask for help to fix it if necessary. And that's how I split that hair in case that's helpful moving forward.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
All right, let's take one more question before we take a break here. Will or Brendan, did you have your eyes on a question?
Yeah, we got one from Daniel, and he'd go live. Yeah.
All right, Daniel.
Hello there.
Hello.
Are you able to hear me? Okay.
So far, so good.
Good. I have a new headset supposed to block out a lot of background noise.
All right, what's your question?
So, I've been wondering. I've been having trouble with. So I've been wondering what I do to help get through things that need to get done that are more future directed. Things like exercise, cleaning, house maintenance, financial budgeting and things like that. And the reason I asked that is because I've done things like that before. I have, gone to the gym and built up those habits before. But I never felt the payoff that most people say that you're supposed to, that helps keep you motivated.
How long did you go for?
Month or two.
Yeah, that's why. Because Daniel, the payoff from exercise starts at about the 6-ish week mark. I would say at the earliest. Mm-hmm. Brendan, do you want to add to that on the exercise?
Yeah, and also like the nature of ADHD in the brain. I'm not even going to go to exercise. I'm going to back up and go on a different road. So the neurotypical brain, right, it has plenty of dopamine. The ADHD brain doesn't have enough. And so it doesn't spend dopamine on things that are small all that often. And so we don't get that intrinsic reward for like, oh, I did the dishes. Oh, I went to the gym. Oh, I cleaned my living room. We just don't feel that. And so we have to figure out how to make those things bigger and more meaningful. We kind of have to logic our way to dopamine, I guess. Like, oh, I went to the gym and I physically feel good, even if I don't neurologically feel a glow or a sense of I'm an amazing buff dude. And pay attention to what rewards we can find and really go looking for them.
Will, do you want to, and I know it's a couple of recent episodes about energy management. Maybe take that perspective on this.
Yeah, well, it's also making sure like exercise, like sometimes I'd be like, I'm going to do this exercise at this time of the day. And then I'd get to that part of the day and I'd be like exhausted. And like the idea of, going into my garage to do some exercise in my little home gym. Yeah, it was just not going to happen because there was no way I was getting myself off the couch. And so I started looking into these like natural energy rhythms and stuff. And it's so much easier to be like, okay, if I schedule myself to do exercise when I have energy, or at least when I'm not at like the trough in my energy for the day, it's so much easier to be like, okay, I'm going to go and do these things, and like really scheduling yourself to, with all the important stuff being like, I'm going to schedule this stuff for when I can do it rather than when there's a free spot in my calendar, and just reorganizing my calendar that way.
Yeah, I think it's so important when we're looking at our priorities, especially around exercise, that, if we are looking at our calendar and our day and it's easy to say, I don't have the time for it, right? You don't have the time. It's not going to be given to you. You have to make the time and claim it. And say, this is a non-negotiable part of my day. And yeah, it takes a little bit longer, like most things, than we would like, for that reward to pay off. And if you haven't yet explored the wonderful world of pickleball, I would encourage you to try, because it's really fun and you can do it outdoors safely. Indoors, I would probably not do that at this point. I don't even think any place is doing indoor pickleball. But outdoor pickleball is fun, and you can get a sweat, and it's an easy game to pick up. This podcast is not brought to you by the Pickleball Association.
I guess.
Go ahead.
So one of the other things is just the idea that using the reward of the payoff as the reward I know that that's also something that we're told to do, kind of envision what it would feel like to accomplish it, and not just it's kind of a twofold thing, especially for us, because we kind of have, first of all, we accomplished the thing. So whatever it is, we got it done. So that's good. It's out of our way. But then the idea that, hey, we did something good. And I just don't get that same payoff. For me, it's just every single time like, oh man, I'm just glad that's over with. I hope I never have to do that again. and so it just makes it so murder each time.
That is a part of ADHD. I know I have that same struggle with sleep. Like the tomorrow self, when I stay up too late, does not remember the pain of being tired, which is why I keep repeating this over and over again. So I definitely understand it, but it's something to keep working on it and keep finding, sometimes these really stubborn challenges, we got to just keep trying to come at it at different angles. And I do believe that if we can keep working at it, really try to have some grit and persistence and a sense of humor, self-compassion with this, little by little, you will be making progress. And I think it's hard because when we want to make progress, we want it yesterday, but progress takes time. Mm-hmm. It really does.
And ADHD people often are pretty considerate of others and pretty willing to be sort of accommodating to other people. And future me is a different person if I think of him as future me. So I might be more willing to go to the gym for future me, or organize my papers for future me, or clean the room because I love future me. And that might help get some stuff done that otherwise is challenging.
Yeah, during our alumni session today, one of the questions that I posed to the group, we were doing had some time to do some work. I asked everyone to take a look at their task list, spend about 5 minutes planning, and then people had about 35 minutes to work. But the question that I asked people was, what will your future self be glad that you got done during this next 35 minutes? Right. So it's not the what do I want to do right now? Right. Because what I did during that time was fill out an insurance form, scanned a check in another form that I had to email to an account, all of just really stuff. But that's going to help me with moving stuff forward. All right. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we have a question about a 20-year-old, and we have a question about, we'll tackle a kid question near the end there too. So we will be right back. Support for ADHD Rewired comes from the ADHD Rewired coaching community, which includes our coaching and accountability groups and our alumni membership community. Last Thursday, September 3rd, we had our registration kickoff event, and it was our most successful event ever. Section 2 is completely full with one person on the wait list. And as of Friday, September 4th, when I'm recording this, we have only 6 spots left in Section 1. It was really exciting to see so many people eager and ready to start their life-changing journey with our upcoming coaching and accountability groups starting on October 12th. Whether you are brand new to the podcast and interested in coaching, or you've been thinking about joining these groups for a while, take the first steps by going to coachingrewired.com. We've decided to try a new registration process, and based on how things turned out last week, I think that it was a success. So if you've already submitted your intro video to us, we will be reaching out, or already have reached out to you, for our last registration event, which is this Thursday, September 10th. We will be limiting Thursday's registration event to 12 people, but only 6 will be able to join us this fall. We updated our coaching page daily to show how many spots we have left. If you missed registration, that's okay. Go to coachingrewired.com and click on the red button to add your name to our winter interest list. So for those of you who are adding your name for our winter interest list, sometime this fall, you will get an email from us explaining how you can register. Registration is by invitation only. Go to coachingrewired.com and click on that red button. If you can't do it now, how will you be reminded to set a reminder to go to coachingrewired.com. That's coachingrewired.com. If you are new to this podcast, I want to welcome you and also let you know of the other 2 podcasts we have on the ADHD Rewired podcast network. One is hosted by my friend Will Curb, called Hacking Your ADHD, and it comes out every Monday. This week, Will is talking about rationalization and the stories we tell ourselves. Join Will as he explores ways that you can work with your ADHD brain to do more of the things that you want to do. What stories do you tell yourself? If you change the story, where will it take you? Check out Will's current episode that drops every Monday. Subscribe to these short, mindful ways to hack your ADHD. It might be the best 15 minutes you spend all week. Go to hackingyouraDHD.com for show notes and to subscribe. And every Friday, check out ADHD Essentials with Brendan Mahan. Brendan's podcast is kind of like this one, with a focus on families and parents and educators. And if you are a parent with a child with ADHD, Brendan has opened up registration for ADHD Essentials online parent coaching groups. It starts September 21st and goes through November 11th. Go to ADHDessentials.com/parent groups to learn more, or email Brendan at Brendan with an A, BRENDAN, at ADHDessentials.com. Both podcasts, Hacking Your ADHD and ADHD Essentials, are both part of the ADHD Rewired podcast network, available to everyone, everywhere you consume podcasts. And you can join me and the host of Hacking Your ADHD, Will Curb, and the host of ADHD Essentials, Brendan Mahan, for an hour of live Q&A, September 8th at 1:30 p.m. Eastern. If you're listening to this podcast on the day it came out, that's today. Go to ADHDrewired.com/events for this and upcoming live Q&As. Join us every second Tuesday of the month at 10:30 a.m. Pacific, 1:30 p.m. Eastern for an hour of live Q&A. Register for free at ADHDrewired.com/events. That's ADHDrewired.com/events. So join us for our next live Q&A, which is today, September 8th at 1:30 p.m. Eastern. We hope to see you there. We are back. All right. We have a question from Autumn. Hi, Autumn.
Hello.
All right. Tell us about your question.
My daughter has loved scissors from as soon as she could manage them. And we've had a lot of things destroyed thanks to scissors. And right now she's got a very unique hairdo. She's 8. And so I'm like, she does okay at school, except for she did manage to cut her clothes at school last year. So
my son has done that many of times.
Her most recent major escapade was she cut the cover off her mattress of her bed.
Ooh.
So I'm like, okay, we got to try to figure out how to limit this behavior. We try to hide the scissors, but she always finds them.
Let me ask you this. What do you think the function of that behavior is? Like, what do you think it's doing for her? Why do you think she's doing it?
I think a lot of it is, some of it is curiosity. I think some of it is boredom.
Okay.
Those are my 2.
How can you test that?
I could ask her. She's actually in the room with me.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead and ask her.
Hey, Hannah, why do you think you cut up things? I don't know, really.
And that is probably an honest response, right? And I think it's actually, and
I totally agree.
And I'm glad that she actually said that, because I want to kind of validate the notion that when a kid says that, I don't know, and for all the adults too, who weren't believed by your parents when you were asked as a kid, why'd you do that? And the only thing you could say is, I don't know. Like, I don't know is a valid answer. Like, ADHD has impulsivity as part of it, which means we don't always know why we do the things we do. Is she getting anything out of it after the fact?
Attention.
Okay.
Just because, look what you did is negative attention, but it's attention.
Okay. So one of the ways that you can test that out is if you sort of ignore and give neutral to no attention after the fact, if you see a spike in the behavior, you know that it was an attention function, right? Because there's a feedback loop that when we're used to being reinforced by something and that thing that we were looking for, that reinforcement, doesn't happen, we're like, what the heck? I pushed A5. Why isn't my candy bar coming out? And you start shaking the machine, right? So that the more things might get cut, or she might do one of those things where like they go to cut something and they look right at you. I love when my kid does that. Brendan, what are your thoughts?
What is the relationship in frequency, I guess, or significance of the cutting stuff up relative to COVID? Like you mentioned she likes scissors for her whole life, but that doesn't mean she's been cutting stuff up the whole time. Has it gotten more pronounced since COVID hit?
Not really.
Okay.
Because like the clothes cutting out incident that I mentioned, that was during the school year pre-COVID.
Mm-hmm.
There was a little spot of super glue on her skirt, so she cut it out.
Okay.
I have another thought on this.
Yeah, go ahead.
What if so do you think that she would like to learn how to cut hair?
That's actually what her last cutting escapade was the hair. And it's been multiple times.
What if you went to like Goodwill and got a bunch of like dolls that have hair? And like these are dolls that she has full permission to cut hair, experiment with. And they teach her how to actually like use this. Maybe even get her a special scissors, right? This is her special scissors. Maybe teaching her how to do like snowflake things, like different things that are kind of fun and cool to do with scissors. You
can probably get wigs too.
Ooh, yeah.
But one point here too is just also be very collaborative with this. See what she wants to do.
Yes.
Because there's been so many times I've been like, this is going to solve my kid's behavior. I give them the thing. They hate it. They don't care. Or more than they hate, they nothing it. They're like, why? And I'm like, that's super frustrating for me because I thought I had the solution, but I hadn't checked in with the kid with what they wanted to do. And that's just as important for solving those problems, is finding out, because unilateral decision making with your kids usually doesn't work.
Because we think we're solving a problem and we're often solving the wrong problem.
Yeah. And on that note, if I can totally derail the direction we're heading in and go in a different one, because I like to do that.
Detour.
It's like one of my favorite things. I'm wondering what if this is sensory? Because cutting like feels cool. Like it feels nice in your hand. The experience of cutting paper or hair or cloth, like it's all a little bit different with how the scissors go through it. And there's something in there that's sensory that might be relaxing. It might just be rewarding in general. And maybe you can, if that's a piece of it, you might be able to divert this with something else, like maybe coloring with crayons or coloring with colored pencils.
She said she likes coloring, but sometimes her brain can't do that.
Right. Sometimes my brain don't want to do that, and my brain wants to do something else. So sometimes my brain is overwhelmed. My mama.
Sounds like you got a pretty self-aware kid there.
Yeah.
She's awesome with self-awareness and the self-advocacy. She's really good with that.
Cool.
So when I was like 6, I remember I used to color on my underwear. And I did it because I was bored. Brendan, your face is fantastic.
I was inhibiting my response. That's all that was. That was just me inhibiting a response.
And I think sometimes it's just like we're curious and we're mischievous, but it's like, it's at the end of the day, how was it super bad? No, not really. Right. So it's obviously we want to keep our kids safe. I think anytime we are trying to figure out why our kids are doing what they are doing, it's helpful to take a seat. And the word seat is an acronym for sensory, escape, attention, and tangible. So those are the four kind of the four functions of behavior. And we can kind of figure out why are they doing the thing that they are doing. And often we are reinforcing stuff without even realizing it. And sometimes it's just like, oh, this sounds exciting, chance of opportunity. And then maybe it got reinforced. So maybe it started as sensory and then got reinforced to attention. So you get a multiple function behavioral kind of thing going on there. All right, let's move forward. I hope this was helpful. Good luck. And the one piece of advice I would give is don't run with scissors. All right. Let's get another question up here.
Bree, who has a couple questions, but we'll go live so we can see which one she wants to prioritize. Which one of her questions is about prioritizing.
Hi, Bree.
Hello, nice to meet you all. I'm sorry for my impatience and impulsivity are very right now. So I was writing.
You were in good company.
Okay. Yeah. I'm 28 and I'm very new to my ADHD and my diagnosis. I got part of a neuropsych eval, but I never finished it because I never scheduled the second appointment to find out if my executive functioning is impaired.
That should qualify you right there.
But so I got the appointment so I'm actually visually impaired. I'm legally blind as well. So I think a lot of it was because I feel like when you have one disability, people don't really know to look for another one. So they blame everything on the other thing. So very new in my journey, first time taking medication. Hold on, let me just peek at my questions and see which one I want to lead in with. Sorry. So I definitely struggle with, I think prioritizing is really hard for me. And that I think we've talked a lot about that. But for me, what seems to be unique is I feel like my impulsivity and my impatience and my ability to not regulate my emotions, I feel like that hurts my personal and my professional life the most. And I got on a non-stimulant medication to help with that. And I feel like it's helped more with the motivation and the energy, but I don't really see much improvement as far as my impulsiveness, cutting people off, and being able to wait my turn and being able to regulate my emotions.
If I can ask, how come you are on? Did you try a stimulant, or did your doctor start you with a non-stimulant?
So I'm going to basically budget psychiatry because I'm on Medicare. So I'm going to a mindful urgent care thing, and they will not prescribe stimulants. This is the second non-stimulant medication they've tried me on. The first one gave me crazy mood swings. This one is better, but I feel like it's increasing my anxiety a lot. I'll get cold sweats and not panic attacks, but little whatever. But I know you guys are not doctors. I'm not here to ask that kind of question. And I have a lot of fears around stimulant medication. I'm also an actor too. That was my main thing before the pandemic. I'm on a series on Audible right now. You can check out if y'all like Audible books, but so I haven't tried that yet, and I would need to seek other psychiatry options to do
what
that.
Is your, and I think when I hear that there's a fear about medication, I want to get a better understanding of that, because when we're talking about prioritization, the one thing that I want to always know is what's the one thing that we can do that's going to make everything else easier, right? Yeah. Medication, when it works and it's doing what it's supposed to do, is by far the biggest piece of the puzzle. That does make everything else easier. So what's the fear that you have? I'm
afraid that, I'm already fearful with this medication that I thought it was going to do more. And I get it. It's only been about 2.5 weeks on this medication. So I'm afraid that the problem, I guess reflecting what a lot of people are saying, that it's not the ADHD, that the problem is me.
So impulsivity in the form of sort of emotional self-regulation, medication can help with that. And the nice thing about ADHD medication, the stimulant medication, is that it's one of the best medications for people who don't have the patience to figure out if a medication is going to work or not, because you kind of know pretty quickly. With a lot of medications, you need to wait, 2 to 4 weeks to get enough on board. Now it does take some trial and error in getting the right dosage, and you don't always get the right medication at first. But I would really encourage you to sort of try out stimulant medication. So if you were to finish that evaluation, would that then allow you to get prescribed stimulant medication?
Oh, the in-person evaluation?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Maybe it was with a neuropsychologist with the New York State Commission of the Blind. I mean, it's just, I'm in New York. Everything's still kind of like shutting down, even though we're opening up gradually. Yeah, I think that my biggest fear with stimulant medication is the emotional blunting, because I'm an actor and I need to have that access to, it's my ADHD gift.
Right. So Brie, what I would tell you with that, like totally valid concern. And if that is a symptom, don't tolerate that symptom, right? That is, or side effect. I mean, if you are experiencing emotional blunting, most often it is because you're on too high of a dose.
Okay. Yeah.
Like medication should allow you to be like not everyone, but most people on medication, when they got the right dosage at the right, and the right medication, it's like they feel normal for the first time, right? Like you feel like your brain, like on your very best day, your very best hour, like when everything's sort of firing on all cylinders and you're just like, I'm in a good space. Things are, I feel like I'm thinking clearly. I feel calm. Like that's how medication should make us feel, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I wasn't sure how it was and how much of it is my own heavy lifting, because I am, going to therapy as well. And I even switched therapists because my former therapist would say things like, I don't know how to talk to you because developmentally you're more like a child and I'm not a child psychologist. And that was very damaging to have that experience. So Unfortunately, I have found a counselor who has experience working with adults with ADHD. So I'm glad I'm out of that situation.
If I can just read out loud what Carl just put in the chat. He says, "What a dick."
She's a dick. She's a lady dick. And I went to her for 3 years because I liked her for other reasons. But it took her a while to recognize her own shortcomings, that she just didn't have experience with adults with ADHD. Yeah. But, so you really do feel like I know, once again, I know you guys aren't doctors, but you feel like the majority people find relief from the strain of emotional impulsivity that, in my case, I feel like I break people's boundaries all the time. And it's like stepping on someone's foot all the time and keeping apologizing, but you keep making the same mistake.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely explore. And the other part of the emotional reactivity component with medication is often seen more on the short-acting medication, so should be aware of that. And it's specifically when you're coming off that medication, because the medication is on board when it's in you, and when that therapeutic window is over, it's out of you. And the short-acting medications tend to have a harder crash. Some people can tolerate it without any problem. Like for myself, like if I missed my the next dose when I used to take the short acting, I would get so stuck in neutral, where I literally could not get out of my chair. Like it was just like, stuck. I have things to do, but nothing's going to happen anymore because I missed that window.
You're talking about, so I understand, you're talking about long acting stimulant medications.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And I've been on stimulant medication for 20 years.
Wow.
And I haven't died yet. I'm, I think I'm in pretty good health.
Yeah. I also worry because I'm also like all of us, like I like you, Eric, I'm like, I never get to sleep when I need to. And I never remember my morning self.
So I hope that's, I mean, I know there's a lot of other questions that you have in there, but I really do. I hope that's helpful because, medication can be a real game changer. So I just want to encourage you to find a doctor, who's not a lady dick, who is, really understands ADHD and will work with you. But just be mindful that you may have to try a couple medications until you get the right one. Most people don't get it on the first try.
Okay. At least I know I'm not alone. Thank you. Thank you guys. Do you guys, I don't know if you have any, the rest of y'all have any suggestions?
Brandon?
I was talking to a client about this literally yesterday. So in mindfulness, there's this concept of the pause, right? Mm-hmm. Where sort of your best case scenario is something happens and you pause. And
how do you do that?
Right. I'm getting there. And then you respond to it instead of reacting to it, right? Like that's best case scenario mindfulness.
Yes.
But the pause exists outside of that space. The pause exists on like a timeline. And sometimes it's like a thing happens, you react to it. And then after you react and like the dust settles, then you have this like, oh, I should not have done that the way that I did that.
Yep.
That's
the time.
That's the pause, right? That's still the pause. It just happened after and it's less useful.
Yes.
And it might have otherwise been, but you can still kind of, I don't know, dig your way out or apologize or something. And another way the pause can hit that is kind of even worse in terms of how hard it is to navigate is sometimes a thing happens, you react to it, and in the middle of like, well, you're just a like you have this thought in your head where you're like, I don't know why I'm flipping out at this person because this is not, oh man, my mouth is going, and that's the pause. But it's hard to get out of that because it's hard to be like, blah, blah, blah. No, you know what? I'm sorry. I was just freaking out on you and I don't know why that happened. I would like to reset. Like it's hard. Even when you're aware of it, it's hard to pull out.
Hey, Brandon, I have a request for you.
Yeah.
Don't ever do that again.
I was trying to be an angry chicken.
Oh man, you nailed it. You nailed. I mean, Bree's an actor, and she could probably say
10 out of 10, man. Yeah.
All right, let's. We got to go to a quick break. And then we will.
Thank you so much, guys.
A few more questions. You bet. Good luck. Support for ADHD Rewired comes to you from our patrons over at ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. I would like to welcome 4 new patrons this week. Welcome to Erica B and Liz S at the $25 a month level. And also Kelly Wow and Sabrina H at the $10 a month level. Thank you for all your support. Consider giving at ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. If you are able to support this podcast, I sincerely thank you, and all amounts are very helpful. For those of you who have been able to give at the $25 a month level, your next group coaching call is on Tuesday, September 22nd at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. Our group coaching calls are every 4th Tuesday of the month at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. And if you can only give at the $10 a month level, you can have access to our monthly action coaching sessions, extra content, and webinars. And if you can't support this podcast financially, consider leaving a rating and review on your favorite podcast player or sharing this podcast with someone you know or in an online community that you are a part of. All of your support is appreciated. To become a patron, go to ADHDrewired.com/Patreon, or just click on the Patreon tab at the top of the page, ADHDrewired.com. And thanks. All right, we are back. We have time for probably about 2 more questions, I'm guessing. I mean, my ADHD self is like, we have time for 5 more questions, but I know better than that. So Deborah asks, how do you help my 20-year-old who refuses help, refuses meds, and is prone to depression and will be away from home again soon? All right. So there's a piece of research that came out a couple of years ago, maybe about 6 or 7 years ago now, that pointed to this correlation between when parents are pushing meds on their teenagers, and we can just include the 20-year-old as the teenage, that the likelihood of them going on medication on their own accord as they enter adulthood drastically decreases, right? So it is this like sort of catch-22, kind of playing with fire and running with scissors kind of situation, where you have to kind of figure, okay, what's going to be better, helping them and sort of supporting them to make decisions on their own when they might not always be making the best decisions, and sort of hoping that time will allow their brain to continue to develop. Motivational interviewing is a really It's a something that's taught in most schools of therapy as well as in coaching, where really it's instead of telling him what to do, asking him questions and asking him to sort of evaluate how things are going in his life and helping him determine whether or not trying medication may be helpful, but he needs to feel like it is that he has the control on whether or not he takes the medication or not. It's possible that, if he's tried a medication in the past, like listen to if he's had side effects that he does not like take those really seriously, and tell him yeah, we shouldn't tolerate those kinds of side effects. And let's talk to we can talk to a doctor and see if there are other medications that we might be able to try. And say, yeah, and if you try another medication and he had the same side effects, you don't have to be on that. I mean, that's, so really sort of encouraging a framework for helping him make better decisions, helping him think through those things. And if he makes a decision that is not something that you would have hoped for, have a time where you can then reevaluate with him. Say, okay, so if you're choosing this, can we then check back in, say a month or two, and revisit this based on how things are going, based on your decision. And that's tough because 20, man, when I just got diagnosed when I was 19. And that's tough. I don't know. Brendan, what do you have to add to that?
Not knowing anything about the relationship between parents and child, I don't mean that derogatorily in any way, but there's also an element of like when I was 20 and my mom was like, do this, do that. I was like, no, I don't want to. And then I'd go to college and do that stuff because I was making the decision instead of my mom making the decision, if that makes sense. So that might play a relationship. And I had a really good relationship with my mom too. I'm not, like I said, I'm not being derogatory about it. My mom and I were great, but I still needed to get out from underneath her wing so that I could kind of figure out my stuff. And did that mean I struggled? Yeah. Stuff got hard. I wasn't successful right away, but he's 20 and depending on how severe the depression is, there you might have a concern, but otherwise not sleeping enough, not taking his ADHD meds that. I didn't start taking my ADHD meds till I was in my 30s because I didn't get diagnosed till then. So I still did okay. And sleep wasn't a priority for most of my 20s. So depending on the severity of that depression part, you might not need to worry as much. You might be looking at this could be a situation where mom's but he could be getting A's and he's getting C pluses and he'll still graduate and it'll be fine. The doctor who graduates at the bottom of his class is still called doctor. So
she put in the chat that he is a slug with a superior brain and no drive, brilliant but underachieving. Learn about twice exceptionality. Mm-hmm. It is because giftedness. Giftedness is not the gift that it appears to be on the surface. High intelligence is just one part of giftedness, but it comes with a lot of struggles like what you just described.
And also, if you're going to force him to do one thing, right, pick either medication, which maybe isn't that useful because you might just stop it as soon as it goes away, or coaching. Because a coach will provide you with all kinds of social proof when the coach is like, yeah, same stuff mom's been saying, right? And also the coach is gonna, your kid's just gonna be more willing to respond to a coach. I know because I do this for parents all the time.
And she said that he has been in coaching and therapy.
Right. Man.
Yeah. And sometimes the best teaching that kids get is figuring out from the mistakes that they make. Mm-hmm. Right. And we just have to hope that those mistakes don't end them in jail or worse. But I tell you, some of the best things I learned in life were from some of my biggest screw ups, right? From some of the things where I look back and I'm like, oh my, what the hell? What was I thinking? I wasn't, right? We learn from those things. And when we sort of allow ourselves, and I think as parents, it's also important when when kids make mistakes to tell them, you know what? I know you're probably disappointed in yourself. I'm not going to add to that. I trust that you will learn from this. It's really important that we are helping our kids, really no matter how old they are, know that we believe that they can learn from their mistakes, and they are not a mistake just because they made a mistake.
And there's dignity in struggle.
True that. That's why I'm so dignified.
Word.
All right. There's one more question, and I was thinking that we can sort of tap into everyone who was here in the chat. And the question is from Ari, who asked, what are some of the best autobiographies or memoirs by individuals who have ADHD? So if people want to throw like your favorite ADHD book written by someone with ADHD, throw that in the chat. I would definitely recommend Tom Nardone's book, Chasing Kites. It's really very, very good. He's been on the podcast many of times. Do you guys have any?
You could go with stuff from Leonardo da Vinci, because he clearly had ADHD. And his journal stuff are really interesting to look through. I know he was not diagnosed, but just looking at everything about him, it's just like, yes, and I've read a number of articles that support that thesis.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't actively seek out ADHD autobiographies, so
Okay.
I can't be like this one. I mean, if we're willing to go with Steve Martin, his autobiography is really good. I feel like it's a safe bet, but I don't know that he's diagnosed.
I mean, someone put in the chat, Jessica McCabe. I mean, her YouTube stuff, obviously, it would be great.
I've heard some good things about David Goggins' book, but I'm tempering that because I haven't read it myself, so I have no idea if it's like, because he's a very high achiever type of guy, and so it might be kind of like ADHD doesn't matter kind of thing, but I have heard some good things about it.
Yeah, someone put in Scattered by Gabor Mate, and yeah, that was a good book. Okay. It's funny because, I've read many books on ADHD, and then the other half of where I used to focus clinically, was in autism. And I love the memoirs and the biographies by people on the spectrum. I found those more helpful than all the clinical books. Will just thought of something.
Yeah. With that, the, Journal of Best Practices.
The Journal of Best Practices. Yes, that's good. I figured I should just open up my bookshelf behind me and look at my books. That might actually help me. All right, let's finish with Erica's question. This will be the last one. Erica, what is your question?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for answering my question. So I am recently unemployed. So I was actually let go from a job, and this was my first job out of undergrad. So I'd been there for like almost 3 years. So technically, I haven't done this job hunting thing in a while. And then to, make things even better, we're in a pandemic, and, trying to work through a little bit of depression and anxiety, ADHD, and all that good stuff. So through my journey, I've learned that I definitely need that external pressure and to have those things like on my ass to like get me to do things right. So I'm trying to, as soon as I had established a routine for working from home, now that no longer applies. So I'm curious if you have any information on, or like any suggestions on how I can create a daily routine to add structure during COVID, where I'm able to obviously apply to jobs, but also not kind of make that the only thing I do. I'm really lucky in that I don't have kids at the moment. So it's kind of just myself. But with that being said, I've also spent lots of time just doing nothing at all because that's always easy. So yeah, I think I'm trying to find a way to include that in like create a structure and do that, but also not be too hard on myself.
Erica, what kind of jazzes you up? What energizes you?
Okay, so I've been trying to figure that out. I was recently diagnosed in December. And then like during that time, I've also been like dealing with depression. So it's been a lot of just kind of like, what makes you happy? And it's actually people, which is lovely. Like, I definitely do get a lot of energy from like being with great people and also like doing things like going to coffee shops, all these things that are kind of not.
Can you do any of those things like connect with people on Zoom?
That's a good suggestion. Yeah. I did that earlier on like work dates, but I don't think I'd thought about that now.
Because if you had like a scheduled standing like a morning coffee with a friend, and maybe together you're spending some time planning, for maybe catching up, and then taking 10 or 15 minutes to plan what you're wanting to do that day, and then maybe near the end of the day checking back in with that friend.
That's a good idea, because I've found that it's things like, for example, like having therapy Thursday mornings at 10 a.m. That makes sure I'm out of bed. And if not, it's easy for me to just kind of like lay down till a while. So I like that.
And is there anyone in your sort of local neighborhood that you can even go for a walk with and have a kind of a social distanced walk?
I do.
Do you have a dog?
I don't. Unfortunately, I don't. But
because I think that anything you can do to sort of like have a commitment with somebody else to kind of get your day started is going to be really helpful. I know that sort of the kiss of death with ADHD is having all the time in the world, right? It's like you got one thing to do.
I feel so lucky right now. Right now, I'm just like, oh my God, I literally have like nothing, like no responsibilities. I have like the time to kind of like figure out what job I really want to do. And like all of that liberty sounds great, but for me, it's terrifying.
Yeah.
Because it's like, okay, so I get like paralyzed from having so many decisions to make.
Do you exercise?
I've been trying to walk and stuff and do that more often. So yes-ish.
Yes-ish. Okay. And while there are so many things that you could do each day, if you really looked at, and maybe even thinking about trying to identify it the night before, if you feel that you can do that, 1 to 3 things.
Okay.
Right? One of the things, one question that sometimes could be helpful to ask ourselves is, if I could only get one thing done today, like regarding the job search, like what would that one thing be? Right? If I can only get one thing done today, to just take care of my body, what would that be? Right. And so it helps us sort of like narrow our focus, because if we can identify, if we only get one thing to choose from, then that's where you start.
Okay. That's really helpful, especially since, when I like recently found out I was unemployed, it was like all these things that I'd been wanting to do. It was like, I want to get back into printmaking. And it's like, no, you also have bills to pay. But of course I'm like printmaking because that's where my attention wants to go. Yeah. But that's a really good question.
And if it's a viable option for you, in September, we start our next coaching group, and that provides a lot of structure.
Nice.
So I would just check out the website for that.
Yeah.
And I think that we're going long here on the Q&A, so I think it's time to wrap it up. Brendan, any last words of wisdom?
No, I think you're hitting it, right? Like, we got to pick. When I was unemployed and had no structure, I did what Eric is describing, right? I was like, I'm not doing any more than 3 things a day. I would only set 3 goals for the day. Usually they were in 1 or 2 categories. So for the job search, right? Like I have 2 goals for the job search and 1 goal for, I don't know, getting myself to move and exercise or something. And I did more than 3 things, right? Like it wasn't like I only did 3 things. I ended up doing other stuff. I would set 2 goals for pursuing, like I'm going to apply to this job and this job. And then I would wind up applying for 5 jobs. But when I didn't set any goals, I wouldn't apply for any jobs. And when I set the goal of applying for 5 or 10 jobs, I wouldn't apply for any jobs. But when I only set a goal of applying for 2, I would end up applying for 5. Because I would the ball would start rolling, and that would keep me going a little bit. I'd get a little more distance out of it. So that, and then the other thing is break your day down, right? Like just and not by hour, because that's crazy right now. Eventually that'll make sense, but you're not there at the moment. Like chunk it in like morning, sort of lunchtime, afternoon, evening. What am I doing during these times? And what does that look like? And what time do I have devoted to other people? Like maybe in that evening you have to spend time with family or something. And that means I can't do the job search then, or I should do the job search then, because that's when someone's there to hold me accountable. I don't know. But paying attention to the different phases of the day and what you can do when may help as well.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very helpful. Thank you.
You bet. Will?
I'd also add, if you're just having trouble getting out of chairs and getting out of bed, get alarm clocks that make you have to get out of bed, like that are like, I actually have a battery operated alarm clock that has a big rubber case. So if I need to, I can just throw it across the room and it'll go off in an hour and I have to go out and over and get it.
You know about Clocky and Talkie, the alarm clocks that run away from you?
Oh my God.
They're about $50, I think, on Amazon. One's got wheels and others got some like internal thing that just makes it wobble away from you.
Sounds like a Roomba, but it's an alarm clock.
You could just get the alarm clock, put it on top of the Roomba.
Have it run away. Multitask.
Oh, that alarm clock would really suck.
Well, thank you so much. That was super helpful.
You bet. You bet. All right. Well, thank you everyone for coming. We do this every second Tuesday of the month. And we'll hope to see you back here next month. If you enjoyed it, become a patron, and don't forget to subscribe to our other podcasts on the ADHD Rewired Podcast Network, ADHD Essentials with Brendan Mahan and Hacking Your ADHD with Will Curb. We'll catch you next time. This is Eric Tivers. Thank you for listening, and congratulations for making it to the end. ADHD Rewired is more than just a podcast. We are a community focused on learning, growing, and connection. The website is ADHDrewired.com. You can find summaries and additional resources for each episode. You can apply to our free and secret Facebook community. You can learn more about ADHD Rewired's intensive online video-based coaching and accountability groups, and sign up for my email newsletter to get exclusive content you won't get anywhere else. It's all at ADHDrewired.com. While you're there, click the Patreon button. If you're a regular listener and you're still listening to my voice, consider making a monthly contribution by becoming a patron through our Patreon page. If you are able to financially support my work, it would mean a lot. This show is free to listeners, but it is not free to produce. And patrons get really cool perks. You can follow me on Twitter at Eric Tivers. You can like our Facebook page at facebook.com/ADHDrewired. If you're a coach, therapist, or related professional, connect with me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/Eric Tivers. You can also subscribe to ADHD Rewired on YouTube. And you can subscribe to ADHD Rewired on YouTube and see select interviews and some other videos I've posted. Podcasts change lives. You can make a difference in someone's life by spreading the word about this podcast. Mention it in your online communities on Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, or wherever you hang out online. And be sure to share it with your friends and your family and your clients, as well as your coaches, therapists, and doctors. And if you're a coach, therapist, doctor, or ADHD support group leader, and you would like a pack of podcast postcards to hand out, you can request those at my website, ADHDrewired.com. And if you're a member of CHAD or any other ADHD support group, please be sure to tell them about this podcast. You can even show them how to download it on their phone. You know, you might be the person that turns somebody on to a podcast for the very first time. And if you really love this episode, please consider hitting share on your podcast player. I'm only one person, and I count on you to help me spread the message. One of the biggest things that you can do to support this podcast and to help other people discover it is to leave an honest rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or any other podcast app that accepts ratings and reviews. And don't forget to hit subscribe on this podcast on your podcast app so new episodes are automatically pushed to your favorite podcast app. Looking for more ways to listen and learn? Get a free audiobook and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/ADHD Rewired. Not sure where to start? In no particular order. Check out Atomic Habits by James Clear, The Body Keeps Score by Bessel van der Kolk, 10% Happier, and Meditation for Fidgety Skeptics. These are both by Dan Harris. Change Your Questions and Change Your Life by Marilee G. Adams. The One Thing by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan. Procrastinate on Purpose by Rory Vaden. The Four Tendencies by Gretchen Rubin. Do you have trouble asking for help? Listen to The Art of Asking by Amanda Palmer. It's one of the best produced audiobooks I've ever heard. If you're looking for something a little bit more, say, magical, I unexpectedly fell in love with the Harry Potter series. And I don't usually listen to those kinds of books, and I loved it. And of course, if you haven't yet boarded the Brene Brown bus yet, check out Brene Brown's books, starting with The Gifts of Imperfection, Daring Greatly, Rising Strong, The Power of Vulnerability, and if you're an entrepreneur or leader in any capacity, check out her 2018 book, Dare to Lead. And Brene still is my most wanted guest, so if you know Brene, and you would be so kind to make that connection for me, I would be really, really grateful. You know who else I would like to have on the show? You. Click the podcast tab at ADHDrewired.com and then click the Be a Guest button at the top of that page and schedule a 15-minute pre-interview. This is Eric Tivers, reminding you to keep learning, keep growing, and keep connecting. Self-care is not selfish, and no matter what gets done or doesn't get done, at the end of the day, you are still enough. And no matter how hard it feels, we can do hard things. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you next week.